So the approach to creating a context menu for our Android application is actually very similar. We don't actually have something really good to hook our context menu up to in our protein tracker application because we don't really have a list or anything. So we're just going to go ahead and hook it up to the enter button for now, and we'll just make it like we'll pretend like it's a cut and paste type of thing, something that, like if you did have a list view, you might copy or paste an item in there or cut it. So we'll go ahead and design it with that idea in mind. So if you recall, we created that main menu. The same exact steps we're going to use to create our context menu. So let's go in here actually under res, and we're going to do new, other, Android XML file. We're going to choose menu, and then we'll call this one context menu. So now we have our empty menu here, and I'll create that group so we can look at how the group behavior with the checking works in this example. And then let's add a few items here. I guess we'll do 3 of them. Okay, and then the first item, let's just make this one be copy or cut, and then the second one we'll make it copy, and then the third one we'll make paste. And then actually, just to show that our context menu is working and hooked up, we'll throw our settings in here again, and we'll go to the settings, since that'll be an easy way to prove that we're actually able to hook this up and make it work. So let's give our settings one a name. Let's call this context settings menu item, because this is the one that we're actually going to use. And then, so now we have this context menu, and then we can go into our main activity, and it's very similar code as what we had just done for the option menu. For the context menu, like for the option menu, we did on create options menu. For the context menu, we're going to do on create context menu. And it is very similar. The only difference is now that we're going to get passed in a view. And that's because, remember, a context menu is based on a particular view that we hook it up to in order to say that this context menu is going to apply to this particular view or button or whatever element is on the screen. So we're going to do the same thing here. We are just going to get our menu inflator. Okay, so once we have our menu inflator, then we're going to use our inflator to inflate, and we'll have our r.d.context settings, or actually in this case, this will be r.menu.context menu. And then we're going to pass a menu that we're going to add it to. And then we're going to, actually for this one, we don't need to return anything. So that's it. That will add that or create that context menu. But there's one thing that we haven't done, which was we haven't hooked this up to anything. So whenever this method gets called, it's going to create it's going to inflate the menu. But now we actually need to hook it up. So let's hook it up to that enter button for now. And in order to do that, it's actually really simple. In our onCreate, I've already registered this here, but just to show you, we just do this register for context menu, and then we pass in the button. So I've gotten the button already. This is the button that we had made our enter button, and it still has that click listener set up for it. But now I've called register for context menu button, and that's all you have to do. This is an activity method that you can make any one of your views. This accepts any view in here. Register for context menu, and anyone that has it will make it so that when you long press that, it will fire this event, which will go ahead and create your menu. And here you could check and figure out what kind of view it was, and you could have different context menus for different views if you wanted to. So let's check that this is all working. So if we go ahead and run our application again, okay, you can see our application's running, and then remember we've hooked up the context menu to the enter button, because we could have hooked it up to any view that's on this, but we did the enter button for now. So I'm going to long press this, and there it is. There's our context menu. We have our cut, copy, paste, and settings. And none of these are hooked up right now. So if I click any of these, it doesn't actually do anything. So we're going to go ahead and hook up the settings on here, just like we did for the other one, to take us to the settings screen or the preferences. So let's go ahead and do that. It's actually very similar to the options menu. So we're going to overload a method here. It's going to be just like on option item selected, but this one will be on context item selected. And it has the same exact signature here. And what we need to do here is pretty much the same thing. In fact, I'm just going to take the same code to save us some time, because we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before. We don't care about the other items. We just care if the settings menu item, and in this case, we had called this different. We gave it a different ID, so it's context settings menu item. So I'm saving that, and we're going to run it, and we should see it go to the preferences. Okay, so now if we go and check our application, and then we can see that the settings is now hooked up. Check that one more time just to see it here. We're pulling up the context menu by long clicking the enter button, and click settings, and it takes us to our preferences. So that's really all there is to set up the context menu. It's pretty easy. Again, just to recap here, the things that we did is first we registered for the context menu. Actually, first we did this on create context menu, but we have to register for what views we want to be able to create a context menu for. And on this create context menu, all we did was pretty much the same thing we did on the options menu. We just created a menu inflator and inflated our menu. And the only difference here is that we have a view, because it's the context applies to this view. And then we had our on context item selected, and we did pretty much the same thing we did for the option selected, and we just launched our activity. Now let's take a look real quick at the checkable here, since we'll be able to see it on the context menu. So I had created this in a group, and I'm going to set the checkable behavior to all first, and then we'll just take a look and see what that does. Okay, so now when we have our context menu, you can see that any one of these can be checked. So now let's take a look at what happens if we change this to single. And you can see here, another application launch. We're going to long click this, and now it's a single selection or radio selection. And so that's it. It can be useful for making it, like I said, in like Google Maps, how to use it for an overlay, but for anything where you want to restrict the options to a single option, or to turn something on or turn something off, you can definitely use that there. And that's all there is to the context menu.